everything is like a Pitbull video.
I have heard that there's like the shadow conference, right? Everybody's at Bitcoin, but then the DeFi guys are just partying.
Oh yeah, totally, yeah.
Our success is just due to the fact that we are not an Ethereum killer. All of our team, we are ETH maxis.
At Bitcoin 2021, while much of the media and attention was focused on the conference grounds in Miami, real decentralized finance degenerates knew the place to be was the various satellite events, yacht parties, and nightclub meetups taking place all over the city, the Shadow Conference for DeFi. While the Cointelegraph team spent most of our time at the Wynwood Convention Center, we did travel off-site to catch up with some of the best and the brightest in the industry. Here are the highlights from our conversations. But before we dive in, don't forget to like and subscribe. First up was Joseph DeLong, the CTO of SushiSwap, who we found at a posh waterfront villa, talking about how the project is expanding to new chains, protocols, and verticals.
You know, I came to hang out with like Ethereum people and had no intention of going to the Bitcoin conference.
But look, Sushi's doing great right now. Just cracked 4.4 billion in total value locked. It seems like a lot of that's coming from the recent expansion to Polygon.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Why you think like that space in particular is taken off so much?
Sure, I think Polygon is exciting just because of the very inexpensive transactions, and that's really like the huge attraction. Even if you know, even at the same scale as Ethereum, the transactions are going to be much cheaper, and we were able to get a lot of TVL on there. Like, I wasn't having huge expectations, but we just crossed 1 billion last week, which is really exciting. We're probably just slightly under that now, based on like just, you know, market corrections. Like, and it actually, like, the rewards emissions only account for like 5% of our emissions right now. So
oh wow.
Yeah, it was really I think just like a really like great expansion, and you know, we're going to continue to do our multi-chain expansion on every chain. So
what it sounds like though is that the core team hasn't actually been working on a lot of these new products. You've been bringing in new team members, you've been sort of outsourcing, and now you have an incubation program. Yeah. Does that mean the 720 event is going to be as big as everybody's expecting?
Yeah, I think so. 720 is actually in-house incubated, or in-house built, not incubated.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, the core team has been doing it.
Yeah, definitely. But like, if you consider like Miso and Kashi, like our core, like the initial set of development, like contracts and UI that we would get, I would say didn't meet our standards, and so we all did like a lot of last mile work for Kashi and Miso, and so you know, with incubation projects, I think that the expectation for us will be like a lot higher, because they'll be building their own product and it won't necessarily be Sushi specific.
Got it. It sounds like, I know there's a lot of other projects out there that are trying to expand as aggressively, right? 1inch comes to mind with their grants program. They're trying to incubate and then acquire. Yeah. So I'm wondering, you know, everybody else is trying out new things. I'm sure everybody's going to watch the Synthetics model very closely. What is Sushi's moat, and how are you guys going to keep competing in what's increasingly becoming a very competitive environment where everybody's building their own self-contained ecosystem?
Sure. I think the secret is like there's too much process on all of those platforms. 1inch, Uniswap, like their grants program is just it's like you have to kind of like create a proposal and kind of go through this like long, arduous process, and then like weeding out is much more difficult as a group. Like we had talked about earlier, is like this dynamic NFT. It was we talked about it on Twitter.
Somebody
tweeted that they like that idea and that they're working on something. They DM'd me. Somebody else DM'd to co-sponsor the incubation of that project, and that will probably be, you know, we'll see, right? Because it's still like really early. But you know, that was the whole grants process. It happened kind of in public, and
I love that. So you want to create a streamlined way for good ideas to get funding and be launched on the Sushi platform like that.
Yeah, I think like they very obviously like bubble up, but when you go through like a very kind of like litigious grants process, where you go through like kind of these individual like proposal rules, it becomes very difficult to get like, I guess, like good alpha in that process. Yeah.
Right. Because it's too much out in public, because too many chefs have been in the kitchen? What do
Yeah.
you think the problem is?
I think it's really hard to say no to some things, right? Yeah, I think it's hard to say no when something may be popular or the person who's proposing it may be popular, even if it's a really bad idea.
Right.
That's my thought. I don't know, it's just a guess, but I don't know what they're...
No, that makes a
They're
lot of
working
sense to me.
SushiSwap isn't the only team enjoying explosive growth. As gas fees soared throughout the spring on Ethereum, ETH killer turned complement Polygon was a primary beneficiary. So we caught up with Min Kim, the chief marketing officer of Polygon, on the outskirts of the conference to talk about the rapidly growing Layer 2.
Polygon's been seeing some really incredible success as of late. Got some stats from mid-May. A total of 93 decentralized applications on the chain, 75,000 new users or addresses in a 1-week period, and you guys have eclipsed Ethereum in total transactions on the chain per day.
Right.
I think Ethereum's still winning by transaction volume, but that's still an achievement nonetheless. What's leading this growth? How do you see that continuing? What's behind this incredible success?
So I think that Polygon Matic's story is a story about narratives, right? And crypto is all about narratives, and we were a very ambitious team that was very tech-centric. A lot of our co-founders are technical, and they ran more than 100 hackathons across India, and they just wanted to empower young developers and give them a way to launch their dApps in a very cost-efficient way that was also high throughput. And so that is kind of our initial narrative. Matic runs on India. And since then, we kind of had a grassroots following, and we became one of the biggest projects out of crypto in India. And we were able to attract even the larger dApps as we continue to grow in scale and community. And we now have onboarded dApps such as 1inch, SushiSwap, Curve, Aave, etc. And so we are now among the DeFi blue chips ranks, and a lot of the long tail actually we're not even talking to them, they're just kind of following the thought leaders and the core developers and the star developers in the space and just building on Polygon. So it's been a great network effect so far. And our success is just due to the fact that we are not an Ethereum killer. All of our team, we are ETH maxis. And so more than 20% of our wallets have actually never interacted with Ethereum.
Wow.
And so we think that we are kind of this gateway into Ethereum for emerging markets, where users don't really want to use these dApps with high transaction costs. And we have such an inclusive community, and they're very welcoming. It's not about intellectual, hierarchies. It's not about like being arrogant or prideful. We just really try to be accessible, down to earth, and really accepting of everyone. And so I think that ethos and that core values within all of our co-founders has really created such a vibrant and welcoming community for everyone in the space.
Speaking back to that BD roadmap a little bit more, you mentioned acquisitions. Is there anything that Polygon users can anticipate in terms of the project going out and trying to bring in, instead of just working with star teams, like you say, acquiring them? Is that something on Polygon's radar?
We would love to. We're looking to possibly acquire a gaming studio.
Interesting.
Yeah, and like Rarible, OpenSea, Decentraland.
It's a perfect fit, yeah.
All of these gaming projects have actually been working on Polygon and integrating with us as well. And so you hear a lot about DeFi, but NFTs were also very, very active in that vertical as well. And so over time, we'd like to build a studio called Polygon Studios and have some sort of like Dapper Labs type of collaboration where we work with top content creators and developers and game developers as well.
Very clever. Love that idea. I think one of the things that Polygon investors are really concerned about right now is the idea that you were in the right place at the right time.
Right.
You managed to attract a lot of traffic and build a pretty significant moat in terms of, the space and the amount of traffic Layer 2s have attracted.
Right.
Perhaps on the back of extremely high ETH gas fees. But as ETH 2.0 is coming,
Right.
How are you going to keep some of that traffic and some of this TVL sticky? Why do you think users are going to stay instead of migrating back to the base layer?
Of course. I think that our business development team, right, they're constantly looking for new use cases, right? And so once you use Aave, you want to use Curve, you want to use SushiSwap. And so as we continue to onboard more decentralized applications at once, right, you start to have kind of a universe of games you can play on the Polygon ecosystem, right? So that's really exciting. In terms of stickiness, right, it's two things. One, we need actually more support from the blue chip DeFi project teams to help us co-market. And so we're trying to continue to build stronger relationships with the teams, and we're also trying to do various like value-add services that can really help these teams increase their TVL.
In addition to established teams taking the next step in their expansion, we also caught up with some of the younger teams using the conference to connect with mentors and investors. 2 core contributors of Rari Capital were in town for a fundraising round and took time to talk with us about a suite of new products coming down the line.
I'm joined here by Jack Lipstone and David Lucid, the co-founders and core contributors, among them, at Rari Capital. Another thing that I sort of piqued my interest with you guys recently was that, Jack, you're now getting some mentorship through the DeFi Alliance. Yep. I've always loved the kind of vibe you guys put out, fuck the boomers, we're going to do this on our own, we're building our own fucking bank, really leaning into a lot of the permissionless, perhaps a little bit more chaotic aspects, and the stuff that gets people really excited about DeFi. So signing up for the DeFi Alliance was interesting to me because, you're accepting mentorship, you're accepting advice. What was the psychology and the decision-making behind something like that? And has it been useful to you? Do you think that you've grown and you've learned something from it?
Yeah, definitely. So I've known Imran and Chow since last summer when we first began my journey at Rari Capital. And they provided excellent advice. It's been really good to get to know them. Learned a lot about when they were at Volt Capital and then when they started the DeFi Alliance. And I've always been a big fan of mentorship. I always love to learn more. I always love to learn from others. I love to network, all this stuff. So I thought, even though we've been around for almost a year now, it's still not too late. It's still early in this process. We're here for the long term, and it's been an amazing program so far. This cohort started about 3 weeks ago now. We have sessions all week long. We have office hours where we can meet personally with our cohort manager. We have mentors in the Discord. We can get on the phone with these people whenever we want. It's been amazing lessons so far, and I've been basically just translating it back to the core contributors and even the community.
I think, another, big one that every DeFi protocol needs to be worried about right now. What are you going to do when it comes to Layer 2? What are your plans there? How are you going to make sure your ecosystem partners and you are all on the same page? What's the strategy and, in what directions are you looking?
Yeah, so we've definitely been most excited about Optimism, but we're definitely looking into a wide range of L2 solutions, mainly for deploying Fuson. But we're actually innovating in the space as well, just in general. Ben, or Transmissions Dev, as a lot of people know him, has been working on basically a set of contracts and relayers that allows people to interact seamlessly with L1 from L2 without leaving L2. So basically, you have these bounties that are awarded to the relayers on L2 in exchange for them performing the actions that you need to perform on L1 themselves. Yeah.
And
so
that is
I'm super excited about that. It's called Nova.
Yeah. And it's currently in audit with Open Zeppelin, and we plan to launch it around the same time as Optimism.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And so what it sounds like, you're speeding up one of the real pain points of Optimism, and many L2s, Arbitrum included, with this delay in getting from L1 to L2.
Yes, exactly.
Is that going to be a generalizable product? Is that something that other protocols are going to be able to use?
100%. It's almost entirely focused. It's really just a dev tool, yeah. It's really a dev tool. Like, there's not going to be like an interface for it.
Do you have a way to monetize that?
Let's see, I guess that would be a better question for James then. But
We haven't really focused on that too much. We're more about just shipping the product,
Yeah,
seeing how they
right
work
now,
before
it's,
monetizing it and focusing on the revenue.
I think that speeding up L1 to L2 as a service, that's very exciting, and congrats on that, guys.
Thank you.
Let's leak some alpha here, though. What is the thing that Rari holders should be excited about? What's coming down the pipe that you think is really going to make some waves in the DeFi space?
I would say there are two things I'm most excited for. Permissionless lending pools. So going out and being able to create your own fuse pool, choose all the assets you want in there, choose all the oracles, choose the interest rate curve, choose all the parameters. It's basically deploy your own compound. Each fuse pool is a fork of Compound Finance.
especially with Uni v3 coming out and enabling a much wider range of oracles, because we have all the Chainlink feeds, of course. But Uni V2 TWAPs cost a lot of money when gas prices are high, but Uni V3 TWAPs are free, so we can support any asset with enough liquidity to make that secure.
Right.
So yeah, super excited for that. I think that'll really take Fuse to another level for sure.
And users can now and in the future will be able to borrow from Yearn vaults, Curve, Uniswap LPs.
Yeah, we've already integrated
Balancer.
Yearn vaults.
We want people to be able to
Curve.
borrow against any of the assets out there, all these different long tail and creative assets.
Only types of collateral, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're also looking forward to gauge liquidity mining for Fuse pools, like allowing users to vote on which pools have higher liquidity mining allocations. And also just kind of like vertical integration with the yield aggregator and feeding capital into Fuse and also borrow aggregators borrowing that capital. We're talking with a couple other companies in the borrow aggregator space. We also may do sort of our own solution. At the very least, we'll have some sort of like UI tool for it, like finding the best pool essentially, but hopefully we'll also have like an automated thing that rebalances. We're talking like Fuji. I think we're hoping that we're going to be able to partner with them on that. But no matter what, yeah, we're definitely going to be expanding in that space as well.
Yep. And then one more product that we're working on is called Tanks, and it's basically arbitrary vaults. So say if you have wrapped Bitcoin or literally any asset out there, you can deposit into this vault. It will then borrow, say USDC, and then it'll deploy it into one of the Rari pools or into a Yearn vault, and it will maintain your liquidation status, so you don't really have to worry about being liquidated or losing your collateral.
Very powerful stuff, guys. Well, look, I know you two are probably two of the most popular guys in Miami. Every VC wants a piece of Rari. So we really appreciate you taking the time with Cointelegraph, guys.
Thanks for watching, everyone, and be sure to subscribe for more interviews with some of the top minds in crypto.